The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
March 25th, 2022. Thank you for joining us at the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. As always, on Fridays, we will be joined momentarily by Pastor Anthony Galloway, and we will, of course, be joined by Georgia Ford for On the Clock, DJ Exclusive, and Rebecca Azor. The entire family is here. Dr. Mack is out today, but I'm grateful that he has not left us without his presence. So, hey, Google, what happened today in Black history?
On March 25, 1942, Aretha Louise Franklin, the Queen of Soul, was born in Memphis, Tennessee. Under the Atlantic record label, her first 5 singles, which included Chain of Fools and Respect, each sold over 1 million copies. Her career spanned more than 60 years, resulting in more than 75 million album sales, 25 certified gold albums, 4 certified platinum albums, 1 double platinum album, 44 Grammy nominations and 18 Grammy wins. Adapted from Black Heritage Day calendar by author, lecturer and civil rights activist Dr. Karl Mack.
Dr. Karl Mack. Dr. Karl Mack is out this week. He is working on the Black Women's History calendar, 366 days of Black women's history. And I want to this morning say good morning to my brother from another mother, Pastor Anthony Galloway, pastor of St. Mark AME in Duluth, Minnesota. I almost said Duluth, Georgia, but you're quite a distance away from where I am. How's it going this morning, brother?
It's very good. Yeah, Duluth, Georgia is a very different Episcopal district, but too blessed to be stressed. I'm glad to be here with you.
Doc, I was listening to the Black Heritage Days moment provided to us by Dr. Karl Mack. Aretha Franklin. I don't have to set it up. Say something about the Queen of Soul.
Well, this is one of those times where if we remember Obama and the Jeremiah Wright quote unquote engineered fiasco where he was saying things that many other people were saying, we forget that there is a connection between those who we venerate in our history and being on different sides of theological boundaries. Aretha Franklin's father is one of those trailblazers connecting. Franklin. Yep, C.L. Franklin. And so we have this lineage that goes along. We forget that Aretha was not just connected to her father, of course, but to James Cleveland. We owe a lot of different we owe a lot of connections to Aretha from Martin to several different leaders. She was not disconnected from movement. So I think it behooves us to focus not just on how she make us feel, to pun intended, but also to how she connected many different folks and glue in the movement, and not just Aretha, but we've got many folks who were the music, the soul of our footsteps and our footbeats, and I say footbeats specifically, right? Feet hitting pavement, were a part of that legacy. I'll never forget the moment where she where she honored Cicely Tyson and a few other folks. And of course, the woman who wrote the song, You Make Me Feel, that iconic moment where she in her older age sat at the piano and just blew an entire concert hall away and said, this is what soul looks like, feels like, sounds like. And it wasn't even her song she wrote, just a song that she made on the map. So there's a whole lot of things to be able to say, but I just want to make the point that, she's connected to not just the folks who were doing movements on the ground, but even the folks who were challenging theology. And C.L. Franklin was not popular for a whole lot of folks for speaking some truths that she also, inherited and wanted to do as well. So there's a very important legacy to wrap around that.
Doc, you have, without even knowing, you've kind of outlined the syllabus for today, because I honestly was trying to figure out, I said, how am I going to tie in C.L. Franklin, Jasper Williams? The funeral that was preached by Jasper Williams for C.L. Franklin versus the funeral that was preached for Aretha Franklin by the same preacher, but that's a whole different conversation for a later segment. Coming up in a minute, we're going to be joined by Sabrina Williams. She's a chief operating officer for ACT TV. We're going to be discussing their membership drive and all of the different actions that are taking place. We are excited to bring her on. And later on today, Brother Galloway, we're going to be joined by Dr. Wendy C. We're going to be discussing homeschool and focusing on wellness and quality of life. I know you homeschool, I homeschool. A lot of families have switched to homeschooling because of the pandemic. So I'm excited to have that conversation, and it's a little bit later on in today. So if you have time, maybe you can hang around and help us with that conversation.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan. Let me jump into one quick story before we move on to Sabrina from ACT TV. This is the thing that's a little bit bothering to me, Pastor Galloway, and maybe you can help me with this. The New York City is ending vaccine mandate for athletes and performers. The latest COVID rollback, despite potential wave from the BA2 variant. I want to read from ABC 7 New York. New York City Mayor Eric Adams on Thursday exempted athletes and performers, including Brooklyn Nets star Kyrie Irving, from the city's vaccine mandate, while keeping in place the rule for countless other workers who faced losing their jobs for refusing to get vaccinated. The city's sweeping vaccine mandate still applies to many, including private workers and government employees. And critics of the decision, including several public employee unions whose members were fired for not getting vaccinated, blasted the mayor for seeming to lift the rule only for wealthy and famous athletes. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are about this specifically, but more generally, the move that this country is making to, I don't know, give a head fake as though the pandemic is actually over.
Yeah, a lot of the conversations in the area that I am and across many different sectors is this question about shifting to the personal responsibility of the individual rather than the mandates of government or city leaders, and it's sparking a whole lot of debate and issues. I have a congregation that is very split on this very specific issue. I have a lot of folks who are saying that this needs to shift into the responsibility of other folks and government needs to get out of it. I have other folks who are saying that this is government's failing to protect folks. And then of course, the unfairness for which the choices seem to be made. I think there's also some concern amongst some of my parishioners around, what is driving the decisions to roll these back. All right. When everyday local citizens are asking for the rollback in the shift, there doesn't seem to be an ear. But if you have power, money, if there's some kind of economic get, right, or social get for it, all of a sudden these are up for consideration. And so I think there's some questions to be asked in that regard. And I'm facing them, and we're facing those same discussions where we are. At the same time, mandating vaccines, shifting to, I've got folks who are saying, well, why don't we just shift to if you're sick, stay at home. We've switched to basically the conversation about treating this as endemic as opposed to pandemic. Right. And then of course you've got the complication for the BA2 variant. So there's a lot of that conversation amongst our parishioners trying to figure out what is going forward. And this decision in New York kind of complicates that conversation in some really interesting ways. So yes, I'm absolutely seeing it where I am.
Before we move on, I do want to say, to me, I might have my conspiracy theory hat on all the time. I think the complication is the thing, because it seems to be an overwhelming consensus amongst the powerful that we are going to pretend as though this is now endemic instead of, like you said, still a pandemic. And it feels like a decision like this creates a complication that shifts the argument away from whether or not we all should still be hunkering down, right? We're so far removed from whether or not we should still be shutting down with 10,000 people dying a week over the past few weeks. And now the conversation is whether or not the rich are getting an exemption from the vaccine. That complication, to me, moves us one step further away from the real conversation. What do you think about that?
Well, and there's another complicating factor in that regard, and that is, when I talk about my parishioners, I'm talking about a group, a community of folks who are 99% vaccinated, boosted, and still practicing, personal precautions in that regard. I mean, we as a church body still haven't voted to go back into person. We've kind of got a soft open phase in our COVID response plan where we can do small group meetings, socially distant and things like that. But we're not full in-person worship yet because of their. So the conversation in our neck of the woods is very different than a place that has still seeing hospital overrun. Our hospital overrun has plateaued and is receding now, right? The chapel at the largest hospital just a few blocks away from us is no longer being repurposed for COVID, being taxed for COVID patients. And so it's a very different conversation in areas that have that level of precaution than in others. And so I think one of the challenges that we have is, region by region and area by area, you have a different set of concerns that are driving it. I think it would be very different. We were having a very different conversation. This would have lit my entire area on fire if we were back in the places where our hospitals were overrun, which is the most prescient marker that folks could see, touch, feel in our community and area. And so that's another complication that's been there for us is we've got a whole lot of responsible folks where I'm at. That's not the same as places, even regardless of how you feel about vaccine, getting the vaccine or things like that. We have a general agreement in our area that masking, socially distancing, not being around other people when you're sick has been socially acceptable where I am. So we haven't had to have certain fights that other folks have to have. Even though the politics may be involved with it. Yeah.
The differences between the Duluths, apparently, the differences between the Duluths is whether or not how people take this pandemic. I want to bring it to the conversation now. Sabrina Williams, she is the Chief Operating Officer for TV team took us outside of the Supreme Court. And we have just been able to get a look inside of what's happening in Washington, D.C. because of the coverage. So welcome this morning. How are you? You're on mute, sis. It's still the pandemic as far as I'm concerned.
You're right. It's early. It's early for me, at least. Good morning. Good morning, Pastor Holloway. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Listen, thank you so much for joining us. We're trying to make this a regular thing, and we're discussing the best day to bring ACT TV in, you onto the show to talk about the actions. Right. One of the main reason the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show is partnered with ACT TV is because you all encourage and organize and then stream and cover actions. Tell us what's been going on this week.
Oh, we've had a ton going on this week. But before I get to what has been going on, I just want to, of course, plug our membership program.
Absolutely.
Go to act.tv/join. We empower activists. We need your help. When you become a member of ACT TV, you are supporting the progressive movement. You are supporting other activists. You stay abreast of what we're doing. You are helping us create progressive media that empowers the left, that covers important actions and issues. And we want you to be a part of that. One of the other things we do, you all know our hashtag is do more than watch. We want you to watch, we want you to be inspired, and we want you to take action. And one of the best ways you can do that right now is you can go to act.tv/action. We have 2 petitions right now going up. So I'm seeing the Disinformation Kills petition. We have another one. Mm-hmm. The Disinformation Kills petition is a petition that tells U.S. companies to stop advertising on Fox News. Let's face it, Fox is a disinformation machine. They promote divisiveness and division and racism and sexism and every other ism, homophobia, xenophobia, everything. Yeah. We do not want U.S. companies that we give our money to, that we support, that we patronize to be advertising on Fox News. So I want everyone watching right now and even watching back later, go to act.tv/action and sign the Disinformation Kills petition and tell U.S. companies no more advertising on Fox. We also have a brand new petition that I believe just went up last night that we need everyone to sign like today, like ASAP. And that petition is to get Congress to take action, to take up the vote on the MORE Act. The MORE Act is an act that basically will legalize marijuana at the federal level. A lot of states are changing state laws to legalize marijuana at the state level. We need federal action. We all know, and I know, Ben, you have talked about it many, many, many times on this show, marijuana laws and drug laws in this country are racist. They are classist. Right. They are horrific for brown people. And we need, and really just society at large. And really there's a huge economic component that if we legalize, particularly marijuana, all of us will do better, right? We can, those Black and brown people who have been locked up can now go start their industries legally and make money. It generates tax revenue often in states and jurisdictions. Anyway, the point is go to act.tv/action, sign the MORE Act petition so we can tell Congress to take action at the federal level to legalize marijuana.
Okay, so that's a lot. We got a lot going on. So let's backing up to it. The place they need to go first is to act.tv/action. If they don't remember anything else, go there and act.tv/join. The point is go to act.tv and you will get connected to everything that's happening. Sabrina, I want to dig in a little bit deeper into the ethos and the community that ACT TV has as a corporation, but also as a movement, because it is the focus on the action. It is the energy that you all put behind it. What is a driving force behind ACT TV? Why are you guys sponsoring actions like this and partnering with shows like mine?
Yeah, well, I'd like to think it's obvious, but for those who don't know, at the end of the day, ACT TV, we are a group of activists that literally came together around Occupy Wall Street. We have grown since then. Ultimately, our goal and our mission is to promote, amplify and take action where, on the progressive left. We want, the left is doing so much amazing work. These activists are out in the field every day trying to make this world and this country and their little small communities better places for everyone. And that includes our brothers and sisters on the right who don't always have the right strategy, but we're trying to help them too. Get health care, have economic stability, ensure their children can eat, ensure they have, access to jobs and good schools and low interest rates, and that we're canceling student debt, not just for people on the left, not just for brown people, but for everyone. And so ACT TV is where these actions take place. Obviously, the past few years, they've been mostly virtual. We've had virtual rallies and protests, et cetera. But now, prior to that and starting again, we are in person. As many of you all know, Jocelyn McCurdy-Keats, who just kicked off her brand new show, The Pursuit of Happiness. I believe it was just last night, one day this week. She is down at the Capitol, in Washington, D.C., several times a week, bringing you live coverage, speaking about different issues. Her show, The Pursuit of Happiness, she had on Laura Packard of Healthcare Voices. They talked about, I believe it's the something anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. Don't quote me. See, that's why we have experts on it, not me.
No, it's fine. Listen, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were talking about the importance of the Affordable Care Act and what the Affordable Care Act not just has done for people who have been able to sign up, for health care under the Affordable Care Act, but for, all of the indirect benefit of the Affordable Care Act, like being able to keep your children on, until I believe it's age 27. Being able to cover people with, all insurance policies, cover people who have pre-existing conditions. We have a weekly show with Care Talk with Laura Packard. We have Black Power Magic Hour with Messiah Rhodes, and we have Solidarity Live with Act Now with Juliana Forlano, and of course the Benediction Show. And all of these shows are bringing you important information about what's going on the left, what's going on in the progressive world. I'm sorry, but you don't typically see that on the nightly news. You're not seeing that on the Sunday talk shows. You're not getting that. You might be getting some mainstream stuff and some right-wing stuff. You're not getting the progressive left. You're getting it right here on TV, though.
You know, Pastor Galloway, I want to pull you in here because this is one of the things that really, it's not easy to find partners in this world that actually care about the same issues that we care about: indigenous rights, reproductive rights, obviously the full liberation of all people, especially Black people. Like, it's very rare to find those type of partners. I really just want you to jump in there because I know you're not here as a part of ACT TV. You're here as your own individual. But in your own work, how rare is it to find partners who align with the spirit of the work that you're trying to accomplish?
Well, it's very tough. And in fact, one of the podcasts that I'm on called Counter Stories is often having to fill in the gaps or the blanks. You know, we had a major ruling here in the state of Minnesota that recognized the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe's original 1855 treaty rights. You weren't seeing deep coverage or multiple layers deep that go with that. So it's powerful to have someone like ACT TV who actually cites their sources. I mean, you go look at the coverage. You actually got somebody who says this is here's the fact and the data that something is rooted in. I also, want to lift up that there's a whole lot of things that overlap with our communities. You've raised it absolutely brilliantly, sister. The paywall that we have in between education, right? We're one of the few nations on the planet that have a paywall for education and a paywall for health. That this is problematic on a whole lot of levels and affects us in so many ways, especially those of us from indigenous, Black, Latinx communities who are collectivists in nature, where this flies directly in the face of our cultural root. So it's refreshing in that regard to not have to worry about. We just lost Clyde Bellecourt, one of the founders of the American Indian movement here in Minnesota, and one of the things that Clyde always struggled with is that in order to make a point, I remember when he stood up and came at Bernie Sanders when Bernie was here campaigning. He had to spend, of his 10 minutes that he was allotted, he had to spend 8 teaching about Native history because we don't have enough of that information out there in order to do that. And so it's refreshing to have a partner who's able to give some of those layers in place so we can actually get to the points we wanted to get to. And so those are some of the things that just come up as I hear and watch some of that work, is it's refreshing. Yeah.
Sabrina, with the last 2 minutes that we have, I want to go to the direct ask. We're asking our members, our followers, our supporters, everyone who just tangentially listens to this show. We're asking you to go to act.tv/join. Tell them why. I mean, I think we've given them a reason why, but go ahead and close the deal for us.
Right? If you support healthcare for all, and you support good schools in every community, and you support, gun control, if you support, climate action, we did an amazing climate action thing this week, a live stream this week with Mark Ruffalo and Meryl Streep and Adam McKay, and on and on and on, and indigenous leaders. If you support, anything that makes this world a better place, go to ACT TV, join us. We need your support. We need your support emotionally and psychologically, right? To know that there are people right behind us, but we also, right, there is, let's face a financial component to it. And every dollar that is given to ACT TV is used it's not for someone to fly off in their private jet. Like if you advertise on Fox News, it's not for, I certainly don't have a private jet. I don't, but it's used to send our streamers our camera folks into the field to cover these actions, to pay our social media staff that does amazing work. I was hoping some of our memes and our social media posting would roll, but if you don't have time, that's okay. We have an amazing social media staff. We have an amazing live stream production team and distribution team, and we're asking for your help. Join us. Let's build a progressive media together. It's not something we can do without you. It's not something often the audience can do without us, right? We have the expertise to do what we do on social media. Let's build it together. Let's take the actions together. Let's show up at the actions together. You all have the signs. We have the cameras. Let's take the actions to get in front of Congress with these messages. We'll create the petitions. You sign them, and we'll partner with our partner organizations, and we will make change happen. Together, we will make change happen.
Real quick, Sabrina, before we get out of here, the motto, you said it once already. What is the motto of ACT TV? Because I absolutely love it. Do more than what?
Do more than watch. It's important to watch, right? We all know it's important to get educated, to understand the issues that are going on. But at some point, we all have to act, right? We have to act on climate change. We have to act on, healthcare. We have to act on gun control. We have to act on canceling student debt. We have to act. So watch, but do more than that. Let's take action, too.
I absolutely love it. Sabrina Williams, Chief Operating Officer, ACT TV. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Pastor Galloway, if you don't mind hanging out, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll be on the clock with Georgia Forth. The Benjamin Dixon Morning Show will be back after this.
People, y'all know the voice, y'all know the sound, y'all know who it is, having all kind of issues this morning. Apologies to ACT TV. In my abrupt entrance with my music, it decided that it wanted to be on full blast this morning, and that was not me, and I apologize sincerely. So anyway, y'all, good morning again. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show, y'all. We are now on the clock, so good morning. I'm never so packed for the stack, never lied on the back, got a bag from the way that I write it. Queen looking Tyson, do that ass survive doing 80 to the house, then I hit her to the sky, change haters on a tirade, talking to the grip and the face be still, let that hit stuff fade. We all want the same, we all want a meal in the safe, I wanna live like I'm trying to get lightning. Trail spill from my lips, feel big from the bip, take a sip till I pass out. Try and get grip, but it don't make sense, cause you can lose life on this fast route. Yeah, turn thoughts to a cash cow. I might flip that. Good morning, everybody. Esther Rocha, good morning. Miss Guru, Brother Tyler, Snack Prancer, Juanita, good morning. Shade Dragon, Elizabeth Wanda, Thundercat Joe, Christopher Shaw, good morning, y'all. Y'all come on in. T Tweety, good morning. Jason Mark, what's going on? Shade Dragon. Good morning, everybody. Roller Dragon, good morning. Do it at me, old man, trying to pass in the fear. You're the first one to talk, but the last one to hear. Eyes blurry, but I couldn't. Rachel Bandon, it's okay. It's okay to be excited. Go ahead. It's all right. Good morning to you. I'll be here for the long run. I'm a slave for the cash. Got snakes in the grass, no brakes on the head, but it's all fun. We done seen it all, heard enough, give me space before I murder y'all. 10 bad there, I'ma curve them all. 12 missed calls and I still made a curtain call. Here to light it up, lighten up. Hear him talking, they ain't right enough, tighten up. Everything that I came for, I left with. I don't bang sets, I just bang on the set list. Going past up when I came for the breakfast. Put me in your prayers, I might put you on the guest list. Young, tell me reckless, gold in my soul, got the same on my necklace. Cody, good morning to you. Priscilla, good morning. Good morning, Miss Sophia. Sheila, good morning to you.
A Black mother was left to fend for herself after calling the St. Paul Police Department to help bring her children to safety. The situation, well, they were inside of her home with her ex-boyfriend, who she had a restraining order against. And her ex-boyfriend had a gun. He had fired it multiple times, including one bullet that went through a neighbor's home. So she was hoping the police would come and get her children out of this dangerous situation. But after 3 hours years where they were unable to make any progress, they decided to do what's called tactically disengage, which basically just means they left the scene. Yes, that's right. They left her children inside the home with her ex-boyfriend who had a gun, who had been firing his gun. And now the chief of police, as well as others among the department, want to apologize and say that they are correcting some policies. They're fixing policies and they're re-examining the way that they respond to domestic violence calls. I want you guys to take a look at this recent story. We'll play it later, but first, Ben and Anthony, I want to talk to you guys about the situation because it's extremely intense, especially when you examine the statistics for women who are murdered. 80% of women who are murdered by someone they used to be in a relationship with, someone that they're currently in a relationship with. And so when I talk to domestic violence experts about this, they say that this was a situation that could have turned deadly.
Yeah, good morning, Georgia. Yeah, no, I'm wondering at what point will we take domestic violence at the level of seriousness that it takes, because I can't imagine what kind of policy would allow, what is tactical disengagement when we're talking about the lives of children and the safety of our children. I'd be very interested in seeing how this story develops.
Yeah.
You know, I think it underscores a huge problem. You know, one of the things that, you know, as a pastor, unfortunately, we see way too often is we're on in the role of having to address this issue, raise this concern over and over again, because folks aren't willing to take action. I mean, I think this is telling that this is happening in a state that is implicated very strongly in the missing and murdered Indigenous women, where this issue is very front and center. And so it's problematic in that regard as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, the thing that concerns me is as the police, especially in Minnesota, are trying to repair relationships with communities of color. Here was a situation where a Black mother did say and acknowledge, I need your help. And to leave her in that situation, you know, I did talk to her on the phone. She doesn't want to be identified for her own safety concerns. But she did tell me none of her children were physically injured, thankfully. But, you know, mentally, she's hoping to seek some mental health services so that they can cope with this traumatic incident. Right. What she said in terms of how she felt when they left. You know, she couldn't believe that they were leaving her kids inside with this man who had a gun, who had fired it already. But she felt abandoned, you know, and to have a mother, you know, feel that way. She said also that she didn't feel like this would have ever happened to a white mom. You know, could you imagine a white mother being left in that situation? And to your point, Ben, when you talk about tactical disengagement, originally tactical disengagement was a policy that was implemented to basically give officers who were in tense situations a way to opt out, right? So to protect the sanctity of life in certain situations, instead of using more force or deadly force, they could just disengage. They could basically walk away, and there was a policy that could cover that. But the contingencies in that policy, if you look in their handbook, the contingencies of that policy are that no one's in imminent danger. And in this situation, clearly you had 4 children and a mother who were in imminent danger. And so that was a policy that should have never been applied in this situation, you know? And so I've done extensive research to try to figure out who was it that made the call to tactically disengage, because when you have like a SWAT team, you have dozens of officers they surrounded this home for 3 hours. They were using a PA system to try to get him to come out. They did talk to him on the phone. They were texting him, but nothing was working. And so when you have that many people on the scene, you know, the mother also wants to know who made the call to leave them. And so from the incident report, what I've learned is that it was the watch commander and the on-call chief. Neither one, which has been reprimanded, because the department tells me that they've determined that this was the result of a bad policy and not necessarily a mistake by a specific individual.
Georgia, the other thing that this brings up in me is the tendency that we're seeing around the country for policing agencies, almost in their own form of protest, disengaging in any investigation or any follow-up on so many stories that involve Black life. And I'm thinking of the stories that we've been privy to across the country. One here in the state of Georgia, where, after a Black person was killed, there was no investigation. And more often, we're seeing it's not just police officers who are able to get away with these types of things, but we're seeing that simply by not investigating or closing the case or simply having a lack of interest, policing agencies across the country are making their own statement to the Black community.
Yeah. Yeah. And Galloway, my question is is this enough? And you being here in Minnesota, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But when you look at, just how tense the relationship between police and communities of color are, and you have a situation like this, is it enough for the department to simply just change their policy? Is that really going to get at the root of the issue here? Or does true accountability look like the person who made the call being reprimanded, being disciplined, being terminated?
Yeah, I can't see, and I've looked at the disengagement policy. I can't see that a policy change. This is a bad call. I think we can sugarcoat that. And I think I want to also bring into the mix something you said earlier, Georgia. Sparked something. We're yet again seeing the disparity when we talk about the disengagement and we talk about the use of that in different places. That doesn't happen everywhere. I want to be clear that disparity exists. So this isn't happening in white communities, and so and of course, as you said, Ben, it's not limited to police officers. The Aubrey case only got tried. The folks were only brought to justice in that case because somebody figured out and put pressure on a system that was not charged. We didn't see the charges till come till way later, and so if nobody ever called attention to that, it wouldn't. All indicators is that would have never happened. And so I think it's not enough. I don't think policy changes. I think this is a bad call. And I think it underscores the way that we we bleed and follow the experiences of white folks, and folks of color don't get that same justice. I mean, I'm not trying to force this in there, but we saw this on display with Judge Jackson's confirmation hearing, right? There just is not the same level of care for Black and brown and indigenous bodies as there are for our white brothers and sisters, regardless of how well-meaning that is. And I think this underscores that care. I think this is a bad call that is rooted in some of that lack of care or lack of being able to see all. And I want to point out, the policy says attempt to use all appropriate and available department resources to safely resolve the situation. This does not sound. That's point number 2 in the tactical disengagement procedure. That does not sound like that was followed in this case. So I just want to call it a bad call.
Yeah. And, the thing, too, when I examined this and, I've asked them all of these questions. I asked them, was anybody held accountable? I asked them, had anybody apologized to this family? At the time of my interview with the senior commander, they had not. And then I followed up and said, well, do you plan on doing that? And she said she would. But, I encourage you guys to go take a look at this story. The full story is on my Facebook page. But this is a situation where it's not clear if this was an isolated incident or if this is something that has happened multiple times. Because, and I say that, I found a letter. I was able to get my hands on this letter. It was addressed to the chief of police. And it was really interesting that it was signed by the city attorney's office, as well as the Department of Domestic Violence Prevention in Ramsey County, and another domestic violence intervention program, right? But the fact that the city's attorney's office had signed this letter to the chief of police asking about not only this situation, but they expounded and said the mishandling of domestic violence incidents, plural, as though this has happened before. And I did get my hands also on the response that Chief Axtell wrote to that letter. And so in the letter that Chief Axtell wrote back, he also used the language of domestic violence incidents. So what I've tried to understand is, how often has this happened? How many other families have been injured? At how many turning points in these situations where women are calling for help, asking the police to intervene. And mind you, if a woman is in a violent relationship, she's already gotten a restraining order. That's the first step, so that when she calls the police, if that person is harassing her, attacking her, then that means they immediately go to jail because they're not supposed to be around her. So the restraining order is the first step, and then now when they violate the restraining order and they call the police again, they're really seeking intervention here. They're in desperate circumstances. And the fact that this might not be an isolated incident, but may have several times, how many women were left in these situations that experts say could likely turn deadly? How many? And how many does it take before someone is held accountable?
Sister Ford, I just, as you say it, I'm thinking about, if somebody Googled the level of domestic abuse amongst policing agencies, police officers around the country, then we might have to ask the question, who's going to watch the watcher, right? Perhaps there's a correlation between the level of domestic abuse that exists amongst policing agencies and men, quite frankly, in general, and the casual disregard for these incidents, because, as you said, it sounds like there's a lot more than one. Yep. As we get ready to shift to this interview, Georgia, later on this morning, we're going to be joined by Dr. Wendy C., and we're going to be speaking about homeschooling. I'm actually making space out here for my wife, Jada. Jada is going to be joining us live on the show this morning at about 9:15, and we're going to be discussing with Dr. Wendy C. not only homeschooling, but wellness for our children. So that interview is coming up at 9:15. Right now, we're going to be joined by friend of the show, Professor Harvey Kaye, and we're also going to be joined by Professor Minsky. We have had them on the show several times talking about the Economic Bill of Rights, which ties into literally everything that we're discussing this morning, because at the end of the day, if we're talking about the wellness of our families, our households, our communities, we have to talk about the economic condition. Good morning to both of you. We have a full house this morning, but I'm glad to have all of you this morning. How are you? Professor Kaye, you're on mute. It is the most common phrase. I think that has to be the most common phrase of the pandemic. You're on mute. Good morning to both of you. How are you?
Doing great. Up early for you and the gang.
Oh no, I definitely appreciate it.
I'm in Los Angeles, so it's nice and nighttime here still.
Oh, goodness. Alan, I really do want to thank you for getting up this early. I want to lean right into the conversation so I don't hold either one of you. But we've talked about it on the last time that you were here, the case for why we need a new economic bill of rights, so that we can get to it for the audience. Would you enumerate what would be an economic bill of rights? And I think maybe that would help people to understand why it's so important.
Go ahead, Harvey.
Oh, I was pointing to you. Well, an economic bill of rights is an idea that's been a part of the progressive tradition for some time. But unfortunately, the Democratic Party for some time has basically turned its back on it. It goes back to Franklin Roosevelt, who in 1944, in the State of the Union message, laid out, in the 1944 State of the Union, responded to American aspirations for guaranteed universal health care, guaranteed education for young people as far as they were able to pursue it, and guaranteed jobs with living wages, and a host of other things, which we've also tried to include and enhanced. Well, it's also the case that even though this was laid out and Americans wanted it, as polling showed, 85% wanted guaranteed universal health care. In the course of the Cold War and beyond, the Democrats seemed to lose touch with it. Surprisingly, in 1960, and I really want to highlight this, it's not in our article. In 1960, the Democratic Party platform actually called for pursuing the Economic Bill of Rights and laid out the platform entirely in terms of that. Then A. Philip Randolph, responding in good part to the opportunities provided by Lyndon Johnson in the Great Society moment, proposed a freedom budget, which was a 10-year plan to abolish poverty, renew rural life, transform urban life, and address questions of structural racism. Martin Luther King Jr., only weeks, months at the most before his assassination, also called for an economic Bill of Rights. So this has been part of the tradition, part of the, right, like the legacy. However, for too many years, Democrats turned their backs on these kinds of aspirations.
That's the part. Yes.
And here we are. I'm sorry. Yes. And here we are.
No, I wanted to go ahead, finish that thought, because when you say the Democrats, that's where I was getting ready to ask Brother Allen. And just for the sake of time, Brother Allen, the stuff that Professor Harvey Kaye just outlined seems to be absolutely reasonable. Healthcare for everyone, jobs for everyone. I mean, these things are not rocket science. These are things that are not only good, but also help the economy. So if these are things that are winning propositions, I think Professor Kaye was getting ready to nail this question. But why is it so difficult to get even our people, Democrats, to support it?
Well, there was a shift in the sort of economic organization of American society with Ronald Reagan. And for the most part, the Clinton administration coming in as the sort of, as the basis for how the Democratic Party was going to approach the economy starting in the 1990s, basically acquiesced to the strategies that were developed during the Reagan years. And so what happened was there was less progressive social spending after that. And as Harvey pointed out, the two periods in which an economic Bill of Rights were pushed was at the end of the Roosevelt administration for a few years after that. We did have what could be seen as a more inclusive, though not inclusive adequately at all because of structural racism, social democratic economic social contract in the 40s and 50s. And it was, of course, attempted to be expanded in the 1960s by the Democratic Party. Economic turbulence in the 1970s and basically an economic reaction starting with Reagan that the Democratic Party more or less absorbed, except on the margins of the party in the 90s, in the noughts. And then the market crash occurred in 2008. And I think there was enough dissatisfaction with the results of the American economy across the general population. You saw the Occupy demonstrations in 2011. You have the Sanders campaign in 2016. And I think with the Sanders campaign, the squad, the emergence of the squad, again, following about now, what are we on, about 14 years? Where, the prospects for upward mobility in the society have really stalled. And they were on life support. If you actually look at the statistics in the 90s and the noughts, American social mobility had really declined, but it's pretty much flatlined since the market crash of 07-08. Yeah.
To say the least. Professor Kaye, I want to come back to you, and Pastor Galloway and Sister Ford, I would love for you to get in on the conversation. I just want to proposition or give you this. I heard Alan talking about the Clinton administration. One of the things that I have a chance to talk to my mother about on this side of the Clinton administration was how the Clinton administration used Black mothers, my Black mother, to end the safety net as we knew it with the welfare to work program. And I had a chance to spend some time with her, and turns out that back in the 90s, they were hiring a bunch of Black women to go into the Black communities and get the Black women off. And I'm using this because there was racist jargon, there was racist undertones, to get them off of welfare and back to work. And the biggest irony, Professor Kaye, I know you would understand this, was that when we think back about it, she wasn't working for the government. She was working for Lockheed Martin. The checks came from Lockheed Martin back in the 90s, a part of the Clinton administration's plan to get Black people off the safety net. Could you just kind of dovetail? I know that's a big one, But could you dovetail how insidious that is to connect the defense contracting industry with the removal of the safety net from the Black community using Black mothers by Bill Clinton, no less?
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is of all people, President Dwight Eisenhower's warning in his farewell address to be wary of the military-industrial complex. It's also notable, I believe it was Clinton who told his cabinet, maybe told all Americans, that I can't recall, that we're all Eisenhower Republicans now. But in fact, if we were all Eisenhower Republicans now in the 90s, we would not have seen Lockheed Martin going out and trying to literally replace a decent, or developing welfare system in America. I mean, sorry, that story just literally threw me back. That's how I didn't know that. That is amazing.
I didn't know it either until I didn't really put the pieces of the puzzle together until I started doing this work, Georgia. That finally I thought about it, and I remember my mother working with the Clinton administration. But then I was like, I never remember working with the Clinton administration, but I do remember her working for Lockheed Martin. And it took about, I don't know, what's that, 20, 30 years before I realized that the government used Black people to go and destroy the safety nets here that we need, that all people need. And then that money was going to defense contractors. But it just really speaks to how stories can go hidden for decades, and they're right on our noses.
If I could just mention, sorry, Georgia, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I mean, I was just going to say, I think it's fascinating, Ben, that it comes to light eventually, but then also the juxtaposition of those efforts against certain administrations really using derogatory language to talk about Black women on welfare. I recall a very famous speech where, there was this depiction of the welfare queen. And so I think, the question here when we talk about any type of economic bill, we have depended on different administrations and politicians to pass this. And it seems like, at almost every turn they failed. So what it makes me think about is like, how can we, as the people, do what we need to do to create a better economy, without their approval? Because if we're waiting on them, I mean, we're going to be waiting another 60 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, Pastor Galloway, I want you to get the last word on this particular segment. Professor K and Brother Allen, if you don't mind hanging past the break, we want to expand the conversation after 9 o'clock. But Pastor Galloway, I know you have to go. Would you just get a little word here on this conversation and tell everyone how they can support your work?
Well, no need, because Georgia already said it. So I'm not about to re-explain the point that she already hit. If you want to know how you can support this work, support Georgia Fort. Go to georgiafort.com and look at that coverage there. Georgia, I thank you so much for making that connection between the Reagan smear tactics around welfare and those things, and the softer, the quote unquote softer, more veiled phase. This is one of the reasons why folks get really misled to think that, particularly for communities of color, that there is not a critique of the Democratic Party as much as there is the Republican Party, and so that assumption needs to get checked. And I think, Georgia, your point really underscored that. But if you want to look at support, and I thank you for having me on, and thank you for that information and making those connections. Support Black women, support Black journalists, and support Georgia Fort.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you. Thank you,
Georgia Fort. And I'm going to support Georgia Fort also by saying, Georgia, if you got to get out of here also, it's a beautiful Friday. Go and do what you have to do, because you have been doing an amazing job in everything that you do to support.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to go to a quick break.
You all have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. We're going to go to a quick break. DJ Exclusive, take us out of here. When we come back, we'll be joined again by Alan Minsky, who's the Executive Director of Progressive Democrats of America, and Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy at Wisconsin-Green Bay, University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. The Benjamin Dixon Show will be back after this.
All right, y'all make sure that you stay next on the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. Y'all stay tuned. Good morning, everybody.
And it feels so good inside. And I always want to feel like this. I close my eyes and all the troubles fade away. I was once so deep into
Laura, good morning to you. Six Dragon Daddy, good morning. Sonny Wright, what's going on? Good morning, Carmen. Brother Bryce, good morning. One Source Productions, good morning to you.
Feel it in my body, feel it in my feet, and it feels so good inside.
Brenda Johnson, good morning.
Feel it in me body, I just need the beat. I just want to dance all night. I don't want to remember everything you did. I'm down.
Shoot the Dragon, good evening to you. Good morning, sir, as well.
Feel it in my feet, and it feels so good inside. And I always want to feel like this. I close my eyes and all the troubles fade away.
Robert Wilson, good morning.
So deep into me. Tonight I want
Tiger, what's going on? Trevor, good morning to you. Shelby H, good morning. James Conn, I appreciate you.
When I get you back, oh yeah.
Shut up, Promises Manifestos. You better stay on that bike. I see you. Good morning to you. Cat Faye, good morning.
When I get you back, oh yeah.
Like it or not, with Benjamin Dixon starts now.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Wait a minute. There's a lot going on here, James. Good morning. Where you at, man?
I'm here, sir.
Oh, you here? Okay, I can't see it. I can't see it on the screen. Dude, I was literally adjusting my chair, making room, because at 9:15, when we switch to the interview about homeschooling, I will be joined by Dr. Wendy C., but also I'll be joined by my wife, Jada. She'll be joining me here in person. So I'm huffing and puffing. Professor Harvey K is still with us, and Alan Minsky is still with us. DJ Exclusive, thank you so much for everything that you do, man. We're going to get it going. Y'all caught me in the middle. I didn't know we were coming back from break. So here we go. Professor K.
Can I say something?
Yes. Save the day.
You have, without a doubt, the best DJ, the best music, especially for the morning. I sometimes just think I should just wake up listening to your morning music. It is so good.
Well, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. That makes me feel really good.
Yay.
Oh,
that's what I'm talking about.
I love it.
Absolutely. That's why I have him. James, listen, James, me and James go way back to college. We marched in the marching band together in college, and he's been keeping me level-headed. He's always one of those friends that you have to keep around you to remind you where you come from. He does that with some good music. So we get the best of both worlds around here.
Okay, that music would not keep me level-headed.
James, now wait a minute. We're supposed to be talking about economic Bill of Rights, but now the people in the chat room, they be tearing up their houses when you're playing music.
Always.
Oh, man, it's great. It's great. Well, good morning to everyone who's watching. I know we had some technical difficulties earlier this morning with the stream on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, but good morning to everyone. We're speaking this morning with Professor Harvey K. and Alan Minsky. We're discussing the Economic Bill of Rights. I wanted to take a few more minutes to dig into it because I need this to connect. I need this to connect with the audience because I need people to understand that if you call us progressives, if you call us leftists. I don't care what you call us, so long as you get us health care for all, Medicare for all, get us livable wages, give people something that they can use to survive. So Professor K and Brother Minsky, if you would help us to understand and connect this, why should people start advocating for the Economic Bill of Rights?
Well, I mean, I think the problem right now, it is, of course, an instrument of messaging. And I think that the Democratic Party, and particularly the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, struggles with messaging. We obviously don't have the kind of money behind us that the right wing in America has. We don't have the kind of consultants. And really, that should be a good thing, because we should be able to connect with people directly without the kind. I think people have a kind of like, they're somewhat nauseated by political messaging when they realize they're getting blitzed with it. But of course, the consultants know that it works. In fact, maybe, turning people off of politics is really one of the main goals of American right-wing political media, and chasing people away. But right now, the Democratic Party, and again, no secrets here, I'm the executive director of Progressive Democrats of America. I think we have an economic platform that is what the American people want to see. Again, in light of what I said in the previous segment, that we've had essentially economic stagnation or worse for the general population over the last 15 years. And there's a real appetite out there for the adoption of what could be called social democratic economic measures, back to, but now fully inclusive, the economics that we saw in the United States in the post-World War II era, but not since Ronald Reagan was president. And again, I think the American public would attract to this. And if we emphasize in ways that right now, when people think about what progressives stand for, a basically more fair economic deal is not the first thing they think of. And I think that's our strongest suit.
Professor K, the other thing about this is it's good politics. Right. One thing Republicans know how to do is to get people to vote against their own best economic interests. But the prize at the end of the rainbow for Republicans know how to reward their constituents with that prize, even though it's the wrong prize, right? It's anger, it's hatred, it's vitriol, it's whatever. In this case, the Democrats could literally give Americans what they need to survive and never stop winning. Okay, it is a winning proposition because people need to survive. And yet, despite the good politics of it, Professor K, it seems to be that the powerful will not do it. They would rather lose an election than to do the smart political thing.
It is striking. I mean, actually, if we could go back to the 70s, I know we've talked a lot about Reagan, but it is significant to note that it was in the late 70s, under President Jimmy Carter, that the Democrats began to move in a neoliberal direction, not only in terms of public policy, but they also went out of their way to recruit dollars into the Democratic Party. And as a very senior historian friend of mine who's lived well into his 90s said, sounding like he's a populist in the late 19th century, the Democrats sold out to the money power for all too many years. And in fact, but with all of this bleakness that we see, there is something to be very hopeful about and to take action. And that is that Bernie Sanders showed the possibilities, number one, of doing a grassroots type of fundraising. That's important. Secondly, he showed that Americans are, at least a goodly number of Americans, are ready to transform the United States if given the opportunity. And let's not forget, in 2016, and I'm willing to put money on this, Bernie would have beaten Trump, okay? Absolutely. Because of the states that Hillary lost, Bernie would have won. Those were strong places for him.
That's right.
But beyond that, we also now have, let's consider, we now have a social democratic caucus within the Democratic Party, not the entire progressive caucus necessarily, but these young folks like Cori Bush and AOC and Bowman, they represent a social democratic caucus. And PDA and other groups have basically said, look, and this is what our Economic Bill of Rights call is all about. We're asking new and older progressive candidates to embrace this Economic Bill of Rights and commit to the pursuit of a social democratic America in hopes that that they will save the Democratic Party in 2022 from a debacle reminiscent of 1994 and 2010. This is a plan. Look, the majority of Americans want health care. They want education. They want a guaranteed job with a living wage. And we could go on and on. So here's the platform. I'm going to hand over to Alan because he can talk specifically about a few candidates that people should pay attention to because they are part of this social democratic push.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
Handing off to me, I do want to jump right in here, too, because I want to talk a little bit about the relationship of the Economic Bill of Rights to American structural racism. I mean, we can go through the various tenets of the bill, but I don't think it's a mystery to anybody listening or anybody who has their eyes open in American society that poverty in the United States has been concentrated throughout its entire history among Black Americans. When you look at the unemployment rate, it's consistently different between Black Americans and white Americans. So the immediate largest beneficiaries of an economic bill of rights would be communities and poor communities and communities of color. And there are, of course, in population centers, as well as in small town America, but very conspicuous in population centers. You know, they're food deserts, economic deserts, healthcare deserts, and they tend to be concentrated in neighborhoods that are disproportionately Black. And an economic bill of rights would directly be attack that reality and seek to transform that reality directly and aggressively. It would directly and aggressively attack the racial wealth gap. I personally believe, and I should mention the Professor William Darity, I personally believe that on top of that, yes, there should be more reparative economic justice, but this would definitely get us a brilliant start in terms of that direction. And I think white America, enough Americans are open to this right now to want to achieve it. And I think it can be achieved as part of an anti-racist political platform. And, having said that, we do have to be realistic about the way white America has voted historically. Currently, most white Americans do vote for the Republican Party. And it's been part of a sort of racist economic social contract that's existed. And white Americans have believed that it's to their benefit not to improve the lives of poor people. And I think we have to demand politically and advocate for this kind of universal program to achieve the kind of transformation that we need in this society as we begin to address economic structural racism.
James, DJ Exclusive, what's that saying? Or actually, I can ask any of you. What's that saying? You swipe the nose to spite the face? Because it seems like
you cut off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah, you cut off your nose. It seems like Republicans are really happy with cutting off their nose to spite their face because they would also benefit from these policies. Professor Harvey Kaye, it is always a pleasure. Brother Alan Minsky, it is always a pleasure. Before we get you out of here, how can people join up to support the push? Because this is not just an article. This is a movement. You are trying to get solidarity around it. How can people support the movement?
Alan?
Well, again, one of the people who have been working on this most closely has been Senator Nina Turner, who's running for Congress. Harvey J. Kaye and I are going to be appearing with her on April 4th. And one of the things with delivering this or releasing it to the public this past month is it's been really overwhelmed by the news on Ukraine. And we've sort of paced ourselves in the way we've sort of led forth with this. We're going to be working with Senator Vincent Fort, who's running for Congress in the Georgia's 13th district as well. And so we really want to get a big lift on this, and we want to just get word out about it. We really now are in the home stretch already for the primary season, and we want to see candidates that endorse this be embraced and to lift it up as part of the strategy to achieve a Democratic victory in the midterms. Let's get 52 senators into the Senate so we can marginalize Sinema and Manchin, and let's do it by calling for economic policies that appeal to all Americans and can produce a much better result than the political pundits believe will be the case in November.
I would add just that vote for the candidate who not only promises to fight for you, vote for the candidate who inspires the fight in you.
You said, James, I heard you over there. You said, Jada, come on. Professor Kaye, you said a word right there. And Brother Allen, listen, I want to connect with you because I want to hit the ground. Like we got to, this has to happen on the grassroots, ground level organizing. You mentioned Nina Turner. She'll be on the show with us next week. And so we'll ask her about all these things. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
DJ Exclusive. Take us to a quick break. When we come back, my wife, Jada, he's joining us. It's been more than Benjamin Dixon Morning Show right after this.
Watch the neon light. Got your ones that on numb.
Bring me back on camera after reading these chats, man. Good morning, everybody. Shout out brother Chuck Diesel, y'all. Chuck Diesel is in the chat room today. Him and Roller Dragon and tag team somebody in the chat room, and I'm just like, what the comment said? What the comment said? And they told me to comment. I'm like, well, it's not untrue, but I mean, she's just mad because I get more than she do. Good morning, everybody. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned. We got a special interview coming up next that you do not want to miss. All right, got you. I am highly tickled. Is that Jada?
Feel my beating heart.
Good morning. I'm trying to wait. I'll wait. Okay, look.
Touch your ones that on numb. Heartbeats like a drum. Feel the fantasy. It is up to me. Stay in this moment. Just hold on.
I told y'all should have let me see the comment and see what it said. They were like, nah, but we didn't want you to see it. Man, y'all could have let me see it. I would have behaved a little bit. Amber Layla, good morning to you. Brittany Woods, good morning. Two guys are playing chess. One says to the other, how about we make this more interesting? So they stop playing chess. Here's a fact. I don't know how to play chess that well. I could probably play enough to make a couple of moves, but man, no. Don't ask me to play chess with you. Maybe checkers? No, I'm not even checkers, I don't think. Because I'm going to get the two confused.
Just another sunny day in Southern California. It's where the people came to play. Don't let them transform you. Oh, come and see what you've been missing on a little slice of heaven. It's the only.
Shout out to everybody out there chair dancing. I see y'all. Happy Friday to y'all. Good time, man. Good morning. Good morning, B. Teresa, good morning. Shelby H. Laverne Rebels, good morning.
But I'm allergic to the rain. What happened to euphoria?
Good morning, Lily. Tiger, anytime, Tiger. You know I got you. It's funny, Snack Panther. I heard that one of the Flashdance songs the other day. What a feeling.
It's that West Coast point of view. Easy when it's always summertime. You and I, every act is true.
That's at the screen, I see dancing cats and dancing bananas. It's like, what's going on today? All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the screen my brother from another mother, Benjamin P. Dixon, Personal.
DJ, you got to come a little closer.
You're on mute,
extra dry. Hey, James. I have a special guest with me today. Oh, we're on mute? Oh, man. No, I'm not on mute. Yo, can you hear me now? James, good morning.
No, I still can't hear anything.
We just sitting here looking cute, that's all. Might delete later.
Y'all are so adorable. Y'all look like y'all about to do an interview for one of the Sandals resorts.
No, we're about to do a Hallmark movie. Here we go. Yeah,
Good morning.
Oh, you must have heard that one. Okay, all right. You with us
Good
now? You got me, James?
Jada.
You can hear us now? We good? All right, I tell you what we do. I tell you what we can do. We'll go right to our interview. James, we'll catch up with you as soon as we figure out the technical difficulty. I want to bring in
technical difficulties here.
Yeah, technical difficulties. But we're going to move on with Pastor Galloway, who's coming back to the screen, and also Dr. Wendy C. Dr. Wendy C., a homeschool specialist as well as a wellness specialist. I wanted to bring the whole family in this morning to discuss homeschooling in the pandemic as Black people, people in general, but also how do we handle our kids in this process? Good morning to all of you, and Dr. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. If you would, just tell us a little bit about what you do and tell us about homeschooling for you during this pandemic.
Absolutely. So a little bit about me. I have been homeschooling for a little over 6 years now. So started before the pandemic when it was not so cool to homeschool and it was not a big push and a necessity. And I tease all the time and say back when it was a little bit like Little House on the Prairie, when I said I homeschool and people, oh, that's very weird. How do you do that? How are your kids ever going to survive type of deal? So through just going through the path myself, and along the way, I picked up on consulting. So as a homeschool consultant and a wellness coach, coupled together, just helping families navigate the process from beginning, whether they're trying to decide if they want to homeschool, if homeschool is right for them, because it's quite popular now. And it's caught on since the pandemic, which I think is an amazing thing as we get in the nitty gritty and talk about the effects of homeschool and on our children and what that can do for them, not just educationally, but emotionally too. Side note. But so in the midst of it, the wellness piece came as homeschooling. You can be overwhelmed, be tired. I went through that whole path and said, wait a minute, there's got to be some way to navigate this and to really understand and to do this better, feeling better, looking better, spiritually better, coming to work, so to speak, but to begin school each day with my own zen and my own happiness and not getting burned out. Because as parents, we have a million hats we're wearing, right? Not only the parents, so husband, wife, confidant to someone. Most of us are still working full time or part time in some capacity or doing our own thing. So just combating the day, the weeks, and the months, and still maintaining and being successful as a homeschool parent is where the wellness piece came into.
Pastor Galloway, I want to bring you into the conversation. You and I have talked extensively about homeschooling in the pandemic. But I also had a chance, Dr. Wendy, we spoke on the phone prior to you coming on. Pastor Galloway, the emotional development, the growth that we saw in our kids, particularly our son, really made me that much more of an advocate for homeschooling. What is it about that care? I guess it's self-evident, but speak to it for us.
Well, we took the approach of, and we talked about this before. We took the Galloway Roadshow. So in the height of the pandemic, one of the things that we do is we stay outside. So we hooked up a pop-up camper and we took the kids on the road, and they got to see the country. They got to see the road. We stayed, to ourselves in terms of safety, in terms of COVID. But what we were able to see is that there was space to deal with their ebbs and flows that aren't part of a factory space. And I've worked in education for 15 years. And so I understood, the challenge that a teacher might want to do what the kid actually calls for socially, emotionally in that particular moment. We were able to navigate that in a way that was full, that met our kids where they were. And in doing so, not only did they get to make sense of the world, but now our kids are back into the school system, and what we're getting from the teachers and we're getting from our kids is this kind of mourning of the time that we got to spend and deal with things at their pace versus the pace of the school district. So I also see this, as we talked last time we had you on, Dr. Wendy, is I also support an organization that services homeschool parents. So a lot of homeschool parents used our out of school time center at the African Wellness Center and had this very similar thing. Their kids checked out of a pace that allowed them to move at their pace. And we saw in the data quickly that our data was the exact opposite of the school district in terms of behavior, in terms of social wellness, and in terms of hopeful aspirations for kids. Kids are talking about aspirations in our space that they're not in the school setting space. And so those are some of the differences that we saw.
Yeah. It's kind of awkward, but I want to ask Jada a question sitting next to me here, especially with Dr. Wendy here. Balance. One of the biggest challenges we have is balancing schedules, professionalism with the kind of time it takes. Just speak about that.
So we were kind of pushed into, homeschooling. We had thought about what Ben alluded to as far as the emotional aspect of our kids, especially our son, was something that we noticed a change in his demeanor and how he interacted. And we just questioned, are we equipped to do this as parents? Should we do this as parents? Would we cause more harm to them than good? But then the pandemic came around and it was kind of like, well, here we are.
Right. Yeah. And
that first year, I will say it was a struggle because my idea of homeschooling was the school system, but at home.
Yeah.
So we would go from 8 to 2, trying to figure out. And then I was trying to do this one shot curriculum that had everything in it. But what I found is my daughter is an audio learner. My son is a kinetic learner. And so once I tapped into that, and we had to do some deschooling for myself because I came up in the public school system. But then they had, a few years in the public school system. So they were used to their routine. So with China, I'm just like,
we're just getting it. And she's right. Her. It's a lot. Most of it falls on her.
We have an adjunct.
Ooh, that look.
This is our adjunct professor.
I fly in for lessons. I taught the preamble to the Constitution, and then I went to work. Go ahead, Jade. I'm sorry.
But it's finding that balance and understanding that I am their mom. I've been blessed to be there for them, to nurture them, not only mentally but also emotionally, and it honestly kind of helped me with some things as far as tapping into who I am and what I want to represent and allowing them to be free.
Yeah.
So I said all that to ask this question to Wendy, how long did it take you to find your balance? Do you have your balance or does it ebb and flow? What are your thoughts on that?
So it definitely ebbs and flows. And I was laughing and wanted to chime in when you said the deschooling or the unschooling, as some people call it. We have to go through that process. We have to mourn, so to speak, what that traditional setting looks like for us, right? And so I'm no different. When I started homeschooling, it wasn't something that I thought I would be doing. If you asked me 10 years ago, hey, told me you're going to be homeschooling in 10 years, and I would say, no, this is not my path. That's not what I went to school for. Never had I thought that I would leave my career to be at home, and homeschool. And I'm laughing at Benjamin. My husband's the principal too. When something's going wrong at school and I have to look to him, and sometimes he taps in and does a little reading, but the principal is the role that we give him.
I just got it. But, I thought he was a principal for real. I just got it. I'm sorry. I'm slow. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Wendy. It's so true.
So, so back to the deschooling process, coming in, when I decided to pull my son out of school, he was first. I have a son and a daughter, and school was just not working out for him. And we said, this is not the right thing. He needs to individualize learning. And it was one of his teachers, actually, that gave me the push that said, I think this would be a good choice for him, and I think you should start exploring it. And again, it wasn't really common back when we started, but I started to explore it nevertheless. I went to this thrift store searching for a desk because, we went to public school, graduated from public school. And I said, you need a desk, a chair, and a whiteboard, right? And we get up at this time and this is what we do. So the same, right? And we learned that we have that freedom. We have the freedom to sit and read now to our children during the day. We have the freedom to map out math. So it didn't come right away. I said all that to say, it wasn't right away that I realized that, the school at home doesn't mean bringing the school, into my house, whatever program that you're doing. It's giving them that individual, that, coaxing, that encouragement, that pouring into. It got to a point in our second year where we were just doing a lot of museums. We were doing a lot of museums to explore and put that into our curriculum. Yes. And then the next year we're going shopping together, whether it's grocery shopping to the stores. We're having a lot of people interaction to get that social. And then our third year was like, okay, let's add in some activities. So families that I consult with, whether they're beginning in those stages or the end, right now, I have a couple families that I'm helping with SATs and what does college entrance look like and preparing for that. So it changes. I think finding my balance is different every year, to answer your question. This year, I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, but both of them are taking college classes right now. Wow. And both of them are exploring, and just like I would have never thought we would have been here. And developmentally, and psychologically, as well as emotionally, giving them the confidence and that added on patience, as you're there with them, Jada, to be able to walk alongside them and learn. Some of the things I just never would imagine. Like, it's me going back to school all over again to a certain point. And just the benefits of learning as a mom. I have to learn to take off that mom hat, so to speak. It's not 8 to 2, and being teacher and those roles switching. So that's probably a hard balance that I don't think ever goes away when you're working on it. You're always going to be working on that part.
Well, Dr. Wendy, please go ahead.
Dr. Wendy, this is Dwayne.
The voice of God, by the way. That's Dwayne. That's our technical director, Dwayne, in the background.
Sorry, Dr. Wendy, you don't see me, but everybody hears me. Okay. So my question is it sounded like in your last example just about going out and teaching a lot of life skills, but how does that transition into like having the, because when it comes time for college and things like that, they're looking at your transcripts and stuff like that, but how do those life skills incorporate into actual, like what schools are looking for? How does that correlate?
That's a great question.
Because I feel like the life skills to me sometimes are a lot more important than a lot of the stuff you're gonna learn in a book.
I feel that.
Absolutely.
Hands-on, absolutely. So when it comes to putting them on transcripts and you're doing descriptions of things, you always want to get your kids involved in the community, like the pastor said, that they go out and network with different communities, community programs, get involvement in either your Boys and Girls Club, YMCAs, and just be a part of things that are going to contribute to those transcripts that you have. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's on our side. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you just want to be able to build them up, right? In school and in some states, I know all states are different. Some states heavily support homeschool students with the after-school activities, with the extracurriculars. So in some states, you can enroll your students in if you're wanting to take the Spanish class or the Latin class or the French class, because that's needed in most college transcripts, that you need 2 years of a foreign language. So you definitely want to seek out what the district has for you. But I want to just put a note that all districts, all states are not the same. And that's kind of a divide that I know me and Benjamin talked about yesterday or the other day when we spoke, that, from state to state is different and requirements are different from homeschooling. So you really need to be mindful of that. And the networking, that's where the networking piece comes in as a homeschool parent, that you're reaching out and seeing and talking to others or finding consultants to see what your resources are and how to navigate that best to get your child, to the next level after you graduate them into what college or what field or what technical school that they want to go into. And really, homeschooling is such a great platform to start, navigating that for them. And you have the time during the day, and a lot of programs are during the day for homeschoolers.
I want to underscore that.
Go ahead, Doctor.
No, I love seeing you and your wife on the screen. So go ahead.
Y'all are purring into us.
And you caught my wife on a hot mic moment. I was behind the scenes picking with her about something, and she said, "I don't like you." And we interrupted. So this is probably the place where we should sign off, Dr. Wendy, before I get pinched on my side. Dr. Wendy, tell everybody how they can get up with you and not only support your work, but find out more about your work.
Absolutely. So please visit my website, drwendyc.com. You can message me on there and also on any social media handles at dr.wendyc. And you can contact and find me there.
Absolutely. Pastor Galloway, before, I know we were getting ready to get out of here, but I know it sounded like you had a comment or a question before we get out of here. If not, I'd like for you to hang out for a few more minutes. Do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore what Dr. Wendy said. And in addition, in terms of the collegiate get, one of the things that we're finding, especially out of Minnesota, is that the level of rate of remediation that's required by students, even when they do the full advanced placement track and all that stuff, is pretty high, because organizations are getting kids out of college who only know one method of schooling, and that is rote regurgitation of information. And homeschooling doesn't, children have a much more robust critical thinking palette. And so, when I can underscore that when we are looking at Old Faithful and we're in the middle of Yellowstone and our pop-up camper, and my kids find and piece together a Wi-Fi signal enough to turn in an assignment in the hybrid model that we have in Minnesota that supports, it meets us where we are. And that was taking away from what is the most learning, to the point where his hybrid teachers were like, no. Turn that in tomorrow. You go explore what's happening there, because we wish we could be doing that with our kids.
That's right.
And that's the kind of critical thinking that they are able to do that we just weren't seeing them being able to do in the school system.
Dr. Wendy, we have to have you back when we get a chance. We are really supportive of homeschooling, because not only, we got pushed into it because of the pandemic, but we absolutely know that it is better for our children. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
I love that. Thank you.
DJ Exclusive. Play a little bit of music. I'm going to see if Jada going to hang out with us. If not, I'm going to move her chair. And when we come back, Pastor Galloway, if you hang out a little bit, we might be able to introduce you to our sister, Rebecca Azor. We'll be back with Like It or Not after this brief break.
All right, can y'all hear me now? Because I can finally hear y'all. Here we go. Dwayne, can you hear me? All right, there we go. Yes, apologies to everybody, because I came in like, I can't hear y'all. I'm just talking all over y'all. But David, we don't have to play that clip. That was just something that Dwayne was sharing with me. It's just a deleted scene. A lot of people haven't seen the movie, so we won't spoil that for them.
Some people cool, some people try to get tired. If you don't have a reason, it's hard to make it all.
Raina, good morning to you. Marsha Reese, good morning. Melanie Dennis, how you doing?
Surely makes the world go round, 'cause I got something real. 'Cause I got
Jonathan Hawkins, good morning to you. All right, y'all, welcome back to the screen. Oh, well, we might as well wait a second. Dwayne, you want me to wait a second? Take look at Slack, Dwayne. Look, that's why I was like, okay, might as well wait a minute. Barbara Ebron, good morning to you.
Clear out the room, I'm coming through. They want to see what I'm about. Yeah, I got skills, do it for the thrill. I'm on a paper.
Tyra G, good morning.
Extra, read about it. I'm today's trending topic. I put commas over bullshit. Yeah, I put that on mamas. They tryna block all my blessings. They thought I lost the stepping. I bet on me and my team. ISO is what I'm rapping. Put on for the whole city. Yeah, I got them rocking with me. I bet on me and my team.
Jonathan Hawkins.
Sending emojis.
Appreciate you, sir.
Don't be acting like you know me.
I need a house soon. I'm gonna hit you up.
That's the old me. When the time rock a cold fleece. Pocket fat.
My credit say no, and these student loans, that's on my credit say no as well too.
Girl, no teeth. I touch down, bust down. She busted open for a real day. Stay timed up, trying to build it up, trying to count it up. Hill figures. Don't be chillin' with no lil. And if I do, I be real with them. Chase a dream, that's a meal ticket. Ice again, they still with us. I put it in motion, they got me steady. Thoughts on my mind, it's weighing heavy. Watch how I shine, tell them I'm ready. I'm hitting my stride, let's get to the Fetty. I was just sitting back
that was 2 minutes ago.
On me now, yeah, it's looking slow. I hold it down and I got my own. Keeping it grown, we back to the bone. Yeah, flying flashy, ayy, ayy. We too fancy, ayy, ayy. Can't walk past me, ayy, ayy. Right up your alley, wait. I gotta play it safe. Watch me isolate, watch me isolate, ayy. Watch me isolate. Clear out the room, I'm coming through. They wanna see what I'm about. Yeah, I got skills, do it for the thrill. I'm on a paper route. Extra, read about it. I'm today's trending topic. I put commas over bullshit. Yeah, I put that on mamas. They tryna block all my blessings. They thought I lost the stepping.
All right, now we are ready. Y'all, welcome back to the screen. Brother Ben, Data, Pastor Galloway, and Rebecca Azor.
ISO is what I'm rapping.
Queen Azor is in the house. We are also here.
The levels are off right now, Dwayne. It's not giving what it's supposed to give, Dwayne. Yeah, the levels is doing something crazy.
Big head, Rebecca, that's why.
So you got to stop calling me out for stuff that only you hear in the background. The people on the front end don't hear what you hear. Dang, man, you just ready. You just be ready to throw me under the bus. You just be ready.
Rebecca, I would like to introduce you to Pastor Galloway. I know this is the first time sharing the screen with him.
It is.
Pastor Galloway, Rebecca Azor.
Hi, Pastor Galloway.
How you doing? I greet you in the name of Black Jesus, otherwise known as Jesus.
It's giving. It's giving Black Jesus. I didn't want to say that, but since you said it, we could just roll right on in there. Black Jesus. I like it. I like it a lot.
DJ Exclusive, who sat in on the entire homeschooling segment, even though he doesn't have any kids. He brought us the uncle perspective.
I ain't say nothing, man. What kind of perspective I bought? What the hell are you talking about?
I told Bubba he was the homeschool music teacher.
You're the music teacher. That's right.
And
music teacher.
So Pastor Galloway,
that's
where are you located, Pastor Galloway? Where's your? I see Pastor St. Mark A&E. Where's your church located?
Yeah, we are in Duluth, Minnesota. So we are right on Lake Superior, up in the northern part of Minnesota.
Oh, there's another Duluth. I was like, Duluth, Georgia? That's up straight.
Right, Rebecca.
That's what I said earlier today.
Okay. So tell me a little bit, since I don't even know you, Pastor Galloway, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I was in education for 15 years. I work in consultant for race equity and consciousness development, and answered my call to ministry on a platform of Black liberation theology. And so now I serve the oldest Black church in Duluth, Minnesota, and I think the third oldest Black church in Minnesota.
Wow. So you're part of a historical, a church, and you seem to be really young. Can you tell me what Black liberation in the church looks like? Because that's that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that ties together for a lot of people, but could you tell me what that is?
Sure, absolutely. There was a whole group of folks, and the term was coined by a theologian named James Cone, who is a theologian in the vein of Howard Thurman and Dr. King and a few other folks, who basically came out and said that Christ's teachings are supposed to be a liberatory teaching, and there is a pathway through the Christian perspective that has us be able to advocate, and so we don't forget things like the fact that there were that captive Africans that were brought here to the United States were inclusive of Christian folks, that Christianity went through the continent before it went to Europe, that God is on the side of the oppressed, and so that is kind of the underpinnings of Black liberation theology.
That's very interesting. A lot of people, would hear that and say how, but it's good that we have, for Black people who are Christian, who endure when they go to, those non-denominational type churches, and I am part of one. And when you have pastors who don't read the room, and when they're talking about these kind of things, and they're just like, we don't have to talk about race, and we don't have to talk about what is, and it's like, it doesn't work like that, because do you see what the world is looking like? I'm coming here for peace. And if my pastor, who is white, doesn't understand and can't really have that conversation with us, it's very telling. But hearing someone that understands, and as a Christian, as a Black person as well, we get to tie the two together and still love the Lord. I like that. That's all right with me.
Yeah, I love my Jesus, and I believe my Jesus resurrected. And that is true along the same side. I'll give you one example that I give to Ben all the time. If you feed the 5,000, you can absolutely read that as a miracle, all that stuff, but also understand that 5,000 people feeding themselves as opposed to paying taxes to Rome is a political statement and act as well. So you got to bundle all those things together. We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
All right. Well, you taught me something. I like that. Black Jesus.
I felt that in my shana now.
Yeah, I felt it right up in there. I was about something
He's
about
coming
to
in a
shout
Honda.
up right in my bones.
Coming in a Honda.
Because it
So look, what we got? What we talking about on this Friday?
I don't even know. Dave
I rode
did a
up
whole
late to
lot
the
of work
show
last day. I don't know what's in this segment, but we had a whole lot of interviews before you got here, Rebecca. But we're in your hands now, Rebecca's. My wife is here. I just messed up for the ages. I'm never going to hear the end of that.
Florida A, but your wife. Tell the people that you're where your wife graduated. No, you know what, Jada? We don't need Ben to introduce you.
Oh, here we go. Hold on.
I'm on the program.
Jada, I don't know.
Hold on.
Jada, I don't know if they know what university that you graduated from. The number one HBCU in the nation. I don't know that they know that. Do they know that?
Hold on now. Hold on.
Florida Agriculture.
Oh, we got some rattlers in the space. Oh, good Lord. Y'all never gonna hear the end of that.
Right there. Did you see how she said? When you mention Florida A&M University, you can't just say, fam, whatever. The Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, October 3rd, 1887. It's just in you. It's just when you come from a school like that, and Ben is married to an illustrious woman who came from that university. So, I just wanted to, I don't know if you gave her that introduction. I just had to make sure, what I'm saying? We shining over here.
Well, I mean, she needs no introduction. This is the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show is as much the Jada Dixon Morning Show as it is the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. I will confess I had to go to Florida A&M to meet my wife. But we will also confess that she had to go to Bethune-Cookman to find a good man. So
he didn't go there.
Hello, somebody. And like Ben didn't go to FAMU. Ben didn't go to FAMU. So you better switch that up. You ain't got to switch that up, Rebecca.
Where was the wife at?
That
good thing was over there.
Here we go. Ben and Jada, did y'all actually meet on the campus of Florida A&M University?
No, we did not. No.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, there we go. So he ain't had to go to FAMU to find her.
But when she graduated from FAMU, she brought it with her wherever she went. Amen. she brought it with her wherever she went. Amen.
Okay. No, in all fairness, we did meet at an event that was put together by a FAMU graduate. I will give you all that. But it was in South Florida, and it was at the club, Pastor Galloway. I found my virtuous woman at the club.
That's all right.
That's right there. Hey, y'all playing around there.
Ooh, y'all need to put an APB out on Ben by the time the show's over.
Yeah,
for the rattlers in the room.
Gallo, she said that. I didn't say that. She said the highways and the byways.
Look, she sipped that cup of tea any harder, and we're gonna have to have a prayer moment in this space. Look, I support you, rattlers. My brother-in-law went to FAMU. My sister-in-law went to FAMU. I got a niece at FAMU right now. I don't know that my kids are even going to have a choice. So
yeah, amen. I love when people tell the truth. They tell the truth with an F at the end. You know what I'm saying? They come over here and they don't lie. They don't lie.
The one caveat is we're probably going to send them to school overseas, so we ain't got to pay that bill and have an international experience at the same time. But that's
somebody.
Oh no, that's a story right there. That's a story right there. See, now here you go trying to change the mood. Ben, why you don't? I can't hear Jada. Like, can you give her some of the mic? Trying to steal it.
I give it a mic. I'm amplifying.
Extra loud.
Yes. That's all.
All right, so we got.
They don't want me.
Listen, we got some news though, and I would love to hear everybody's take on a lot of what's going on here. I wanted to talk about the U.S. and how it's accepting 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. Yeah. I wanted to briefly, because I feel like I'm being rushed off by the producer, I wanted to briefly discuss that because I know on the show I have spoken about being Haitian, and I've spoken about the situations going on in Haiti. I spoke about Title 42. I believe that is something that Donald Trump put in place originally, that didn't allow asylum seekers to be able to, get their freedoms here. And then more recently, our own president, Joe Biden, who was said to be someone who was liberal for the people and who said when he was running and campaigning that he would protect the people of Haiti, listen to them, and, get them the assistance that they needed. Now, there was a war happening there. People have been protesting in the street for years. They had a situation with getting fuel, and then their assassination of their president. Also, the earthquake on top of a whole tropical storm hitting them at the same damn time. And they came over here last year around September seeking asylum. They all went through Chile, Brazil, so many different avenues, going through Mexico to get to the border over there in Texas under a bridge, hoping that they too can find refuge here. One of those people being my own cousin, who was asked why did he come, and he said, why he came. There's a war happening. I don't feel safe. There was an assassination of my president. And with the recent earthquake, I have no resources. They told him that wasn't enough, and they sent his ass right back to Haiti. Now, I'm looking at the situations that are going on right now. In the midst of that, when they sent those people back to Haiti and the treatment of those Haitians under that bridge, predominantly Haitians under that bridge, we saw them being whipped, right? That's right? And however they want to frame it, however they want to say it was, what it looked like, what they were utilizing, what we saw as Black folks watching, and what us Haitians saw were our family members getting whipped. Sure. And then our president saying they had to send them back. Jen Psaki making a statement and saying, you know, we had to send them back. There's no options. There's no opportunity for us to really keep them in the middle of a pandemic, the same pandemic that they're not acknowledging on a regular day. But in this particular moment, they acknowledge that there was a pandemic going on. And we got to send them back because this is putting our Americans at risk. So we can't keep them here. So many excuses happened. And now we have Ukrainians who are seeking refuge, as they should. Mm-hmm. And we're presented here, or they are presented here with the opportunity to come and stay, 100,000. To come and stay, free of charge. No stress. No Title 42, no questioning, nothing. And it just takes me back to a moment where I said this on the show. I said, you know, Black immigrants are treated terribly. They're at the bottom of the grid when it comes to how they're treated here in America. The darker you are, the worse treatment you get, but something about Haitian immigrants. Spoke to an immigration professional trying to get assistance for my cousin at the time who was under the bridge. And she was telling me, she said, I don't know why, ma'am, if I can just be frank with you, I don't know why I never experienced this much pushback with any other immigrant, but you know, and even some Black ones, I never experienced that. And she was white, so I kind of looked at my phone like, lady, you don't get to say Black. But, you know, she went on to say something about Haitian immigrants. They're just treated the worst. I've never seen anything like it. So tell me in this case, if you guys see a difference, but tell me in this case what it is that I'm missing where Haitians just can't get that same grace. Their situations can't be understood. And we see these Ukrainians who can come here and just be blessed with opportunity, safety, and be acknowledged as people. Am I tripping? Am I going crazy? Do I have the right to feel upset?
Yeah. No, I don't think you're crazy for sure. Go ahead, Pastor Galloway.
So we have a thing that we practice at St. Mark. It's called Patterns, Coded Language, and Institutions. We need to be having conversations about racialized patterns, racialized coded language, and racialized institutions. And this is a perfect, Rebecca, you have hit on the head a perfect example of this, where the data backs you up. The visual is clear. And even the tiered system. Take a look at how Haitians were treated versus how Afghans who we left hanging in our pullout were treated versus the Ukrainians. I mean, you have a color line here in this space already, let alone, you know, I'm a member of the AME Church. You know, one of our founder, Bishop Richard Allen, went to Haiti and was trying to get us to recognize that their fight for independence was similar to our fight, and it got ignored. And so there's a pattern and consistent history of you know, the darker your skin, the more visceral your experience here in the Americas, all of the Americas, but of course acutely in the United States. And so I don't think you're crazy. What I think you're naming is this racialized pattern and coded language and institutional space. Because even look at the language around the situation in Haiti versus the language around what's happening in Ukraine. It does not diminish the need, or as you said it earlier, right? But it's a pattern that we need to name and feel some kind of way about. My problem is that we don't take enough time to feel some kind of way about that.
Yeah. Right there. I mean, I think I had a good maybe few days. I went on to the Hill. I discussed it on the Hill. And I feel like even in that moment, people were like, no, there not procedures that we have to follow? Do we not have to follow due process? Right. If Jen Psaki gets up and says that means that the president has an idea of what he's doing. It's not problematic when the president pulls up with something like this. Is it not problematic? Because this shows us that this was Title 42 is something that is drenched in racism It's there is color lines here. Why does this not? Why can't we have the conversation and talk about the refugees that came in with no issue right before the Haitians, who were predominantly more on the white side? Why can't we talk about that? Why can't we talk about how Airbnbs were given to them? Why can't we have those conversations? No, because when we have those conversations, it causes Americans and America to actually look at the people and the representation that we had that said that they're not racist because they name themselves as liberal people. It causes us to actually put a mirror up to them. And they don't want that. They don't want that conversation. It's always they always give us, when I talked about it, the comment section, literally, or people who were reaching out to me in my DMs were saying, you always bring race into things. But I'm like, how can we not? Literally everything, every law, everything in America was built with white people in mind. They were not built with black people in mind to benefit from. None of it. None of it. So people who look like me being here is I'm black, just like everybody else. But as soon as I open my mouth and I start speaking another language, and then they figure out that I'm Haitian, I get treated like trash, like trash. My parents. Now, when I saw them immigrants over there, people didn't know that I had family under that bridge. People didn't know what I was dealing with in the background trying to get them to freedom. People didn't understand. People didn't know that. And I can't bring that story all the time to places like In the Hill. They're going to be like, oh, she's being too emotional. Well, actually, you know what? My experience actually is the damn story. Because I can tell you from experience. I can let you know what it looks like. What I'm dealing with right now, you're just hearing it from somebody else, but hearing it directly from me, I think it's pretty, I believe that stands. That's something that should count. Wow. In the same sense as somebody that's fighting for the freedoms of Haitians, black folks, black women, all of us. These conversations need to be had. And and this is not saying that Ukrainians don't deserve.
That's right.
I need people to understand that this does not take away from that, because then people start to try to create that conversation as that is not the narrative. That is not it. It's saying why do Haitians, why don't they deserve? Why don't the African immigrants deserve?
Come on.
I got in trouble when I said this last time, but what you just described, right? That zero-sum game, that piece of pie, it's the same thing as when an entire room full of folks, after hearing an experience like you just shared, turns to the white woman in the room who's crying and spends all their emotional time and energy taking care of that person rather than the person who's actually experienced the negative treatment. Wow. I think the assumption that in order to do that, we have to displace or not do the thing that we need to do right now for Ukrainians is same part of that pattern and mental process that tries to tell us that in order to address these issues, somebody's got to lose something. And that is not true. That is a tool of our white supremacist thinking that we are indoctrinated and ingrained in, to think that anything that we do means a war on white folks. That's not the case. It has never been the case. And I want to add this step further. Not only have folks not stepped up to the plate when it comes to black and brown and indigenous bodies, but we have actually seen that when we have taken the autonomous reins on our own, what were indigenous folks met with? Treaties that undermine their autonomy and sovereignty. What were black townships like Tulsa, Rosewood, Ocoee, and Mound Bayou, all these different places, what were they met with? Extreme white violence to dismantle. So I think we got to be real about it's not, this is not just a passive pattern to go back and look at and go, oh, I forgot something. No. There is active, intentional work being done to undermine it. And I think that needs to be just as much of the conversation. And that makes folks uncomfortable because you have to own your own stuff.
Y'all right talking, good God almighty this morning. I ain't got to say nothing, James. Between Rebecca and Pastor, actually, y'all know I'm going to say something because the conversation is so rich. Rebecca, when you said Pastor Galloway, Tulsa, it brought me up to date with the city in, I believe, Tennessee. We just spoke with the journalist earlier this week. And it may not be Tennessee, David, if you don't mind getting me the right state, where now this black town that has been historically black But watch this. Up until 2015, it was run by majority white city council, white mayors, just like Ferguson. How many cities across the country do we see where it's a black population, but with white leadership? And when you brought up the violence that Tulsa faced and how white supremacy gets in and not only destroys us when we try to get off the ground, right? We try to build a city, Tulsa, they destroy it. The immigration part, Rebecca, drives me batty because in a few years, some of those Ukrainians who you know I support, who you know I love, y'all know I'm damn near about to write a song to help them out. But in a few years in the United States of America, some of those white Ukrainians will have more privilege in this country than black folks that have been here for 7-8 generations, right? And it's all tied together with the fact that black folks are the under society in this society that is providing wealth. We're providing resources. We're providing them swag. We're providing them with style. And as soon as we start getting some of the wealth from our greatness, well, they do what they did in that town in, I believe, Tennessee, where now, after all these years being underneath white rule and white misleadership, black folks finally got in power. And you know what the white city manager decided to do? Said, nah, we're going to cancel the entire city. He wants the city to revoke their entire city charter because now black folks have taken charge of their own destiny. So that violence goes from immigration all the way to when we try to build our own. White supremacy is there to attack us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Ben, right there. I was actually watching, and if I could just have a few more moments of
take your
the
time,
show's
sister.
time. Thank you.
Take your time.
So, because I got the devil in the background trying to work, but I got my amen corner right, on YouTube in the comment sections. Praise God for Jesus. No, seriously though. But I see nobody said your name. But you know what? I was watching Netflix yesterday, honestly, and on Netflix there was a show, whatever called, and I know this is crazy, but I'm going to make this example: Bad Vegan. And the woman on the show, she's she runs $1 million business. She is literally, her and this man that she meets are conning people out of money, like constantly borrowing. Constantly. The man's helping her steal money. I don't know. It's weird. But the fact that she done had the opportunity to go and keep continuing to invest, investors continuing to get her money. She had that opportunity constantly, even though her history showed that this lady she's not reliable. We can't trust her with any money, right? And I kept watching this and I said, damn, if this was a black restaurant owner, if this was any, people, if they were going through some kind of psychological issue and taking money and putting it in a mysterious place or whatever, they said they were doing, and they kept asking people to borrow money and they kept getting it. They were asking their mother to borrow money and kept getting it. And I'm thinking to myself, how are the banks and investors really saying that this woman is reliable? A billionaire restaurant investor said, you're $2 million in the hole, but I really like you. So that's all that this person needed. Imagine us, black folks, that put their blood, sweat, and tears into building that white woman's family's legacy. At some point, going to the bank and saying, I done messed up with some money over here, and I would love another investment. Can you guys allow me into another opportunity, another chance? That woman was granted so many opportunities, so many chances, went to jail for only 4 months for conning people out of millions of dollars. And I kept saying, imagine if we can't even go to the bank and ask them for nothing for a house.
$30,000.
Even if we got some money, even if we got a good job, even if we got good credit. This is our history as black people in this country. Opportunities don't come to us. Immigrants who come here, slaves. All of us sitting up here who were families were forced here. We ain't got no say in nothing. Created communities because we were told after we got free, we were told that we can't stay in certain towns and we can't do certain things. Created communities, and those, like you said, those communities were bombed, taken away from us. Predominantly black areas have white leadership. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
I don't think that you can. Even the founders of the AME Church, Richard Allen and the whole community, found themselves resistant to the yellow fever pandemic in Philadelphia. Served as nurses to take care of Philadelphians. Were never paid for their labor. Went to their abolitionist friends to say, "Hey, folks aren't paying us for our labor for supporting folks through all of this," and they told them that maybe they can work some odd jobs to make that money back. I mean, no matter where you go, no matter where you.
Woo.
Rebecca.
I mean, it's good. It's good. It gets hot, but we're on our way to the after party, I believe. So this was a good little segment. Nice to meet you, Pastor Galloway. Hopefully we can have you on the show. Man. Where can people find you?
You can go to St. Mark AME Duluth. You can Google it, or you can go to stmark-ame.org and find us there. Growing a nice little community. Our giving garden work is going on, which is kind of bringing a little Afrocentrism to the Northland of Minnesota.
Hey,
love it. All right, y'all. We're headed to the after party. It is Friday. Make sure you grab something in your cup. Put some Jesus juice in your cup, and we'll be back right after the
wedding at Cana.
I can't stand to be around people who are too fake. I can't stand to do some business if you're too late. I beat the defeated. I beat the mistreated. I beat the odds deleted. On top, I'm ODing. No rock star with these leather pants. I'm ACDCing. When I die, I bet they love me, but hate me when I'm breathing. Got them fake. I think you only love me cause I'm popping. This a layup, this a rebound, that's rubbing. Tyson with the fade, not the hair, my hands rocking. When I link with ball point. Hey. I think you only love me cause I'm popping. This a layup, this a rebound, then it's driving. Tyson with the fade, not the hair, my hands rocking. When I link with ball point, you know.
All right, y'all have a good one. After party time is coming up next. We'll see y'all there. Deuces, go be great today. Happy Friday, everybody. Have an amazing weekend if we don't see you at the after party.